What's up, guys? Coach Jared from Richmond Elite Performance here today with another episode of our Unfair Advantage podcast. Today's guest is a very special guest. It's going to be a little bit different episode. Um, Today's guest is Zach Bartell. Zach is actually my business coach. He's been my business coach for almost 3 years now. Pretty crazy. And in this time, our gym has grown a ton. And he's, pretty much the main reason for that. So really today I wanted to get a different perspective on, most of our episodes have been performance based, how to improve your performance, kind of diving deep with some of our, athletes and that kind of thing in the fitness world. And today I want to peel back the onion a little bit and kind of go behind the scenes into what I kind of deal with on a daily basis and what it's really like. Cause I have people all the time. They're like, "Hey, I want to own a gym someday. I want to be like you." And it's like, well, maybe, and so
Look at
we'll
you.
kind of dive into that. But yeah, Zach here is the owner of SoCal Powerlifting, um, a, $1 million powerlifting gym in Southern California. Are you in Irvine?
Irvine, yeah.
Yep. And how long have you been open now?
Yeah, we've been open since 2017, and even before you get into that, first of all, I just want to say thank you for the way over the top intro. I'm glad to play a small part in the success that you've had, but you've been the one that's taken everything that you've learned from me and taken it so much further than I think I could have even ever imagined for you when we began, based on where we started. So I really appreciate that, the compliments that you've given me. But man, I'm just humbled just to be here, and I'm so glad to just been able to watch your growth trajectory and again play a small part.
Well, thanks for being here, man. I remember when we first talked, when we first started working together, I was like, I don't know how big I want this gym to get. Right? Do you remember that?
Yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
I think I want to just keep this thing kind of small. And um, yeah, it's got a lot bigger since then. And
Yeah.
obviously, that not what I actually wanted. I think you just go through times, stressful times, and you're like, I don't know. It'd be nice to, because the bigger you grow, the more problems you have, right? That kind of thing.
The more you have
Um,
to lose, the higher the lower the floor, the higher the ceiling. Absolutely.
Margins start to shrink a little bit. So anyways, it's just kind of funny that, I was probably one of the ones you're like, when you first started, oh, he doesn't even want to grow his business. Well, we're going to have a hard time then. Right. And I would think I'm probably one of your more successful clients,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
You have been the most successful as in terms of the amount of growth that you've experienced. I mean, we've what 6, 7 x'd or so since we started. Does that sound about right? Got
Yeah.
quick maths.
No, that,
Yeah.
that sounds about right. That's, yeah,
Yeah.
I'd say about 7.
And a lot of people, one of the things that I talk about in with when it comes to business mentorship with service business, because I do fitness, but also all service business has the same principles. And there's a valley of death once you reach typically about 14,000 a month, 15. That's when you have to go from solopreneur to I want to grow a team. And team and people problems are a whole different level of problems that some people never get through. They don't rise to the occasion of leadership and upskill their leadership capability to the level that it needs to get to the next tranche. And so you busted through that and took it to a whole different level that most people aren't able to do, frankly.
Yeah, and remember, people listening, when we talk numbers, we're most likely talking top end revenue
Yes,
numbers,
yes,
right? So if you
yes.
hear any crazy numbers, I promise you that is not what either one of us are bringing home, right? When I said Zach owns $1 million, gym, he's bringing home $1 million, or the gym is bringing in $1 million in revenue.
Gross ref.
We'll talk about margins at some point,
Yep.
but margins on gyms are pretty slim, right? So, or they can be, depending on how you run it. And that's something that I've been lucky enough. I think I've done a decent job of keeping my margins as big as I can by kind of bootstrapping a lot along the way, and just being smart. Like Zach's led me, and he was, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we first started, you're probably a little bit more of a fast grower, like, where you would maybe throw money a little bit harder than I would at things. And you kind of worked with me on my risk aversion, and kind of just, hey, if you're right, if you want to do it this way, then this is how we're going to do it. And you made me comfortable that way.
Yeah, you have different types of people that entrepreneurs. And so for me, I've always run towards the risk, which has served me well in certain periods of life. And as I've gotten older, we're similar in age. You're 29, I'm 28. You're 29, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I think when we're younger, well, at least for me, I'll speak to my experience. When I was younger, which some people listening to this might be like, "Shut up, you're still young," which is true. But I had less to lose and more to gain, and so I was more willing to reinvest here and there and try more things and fail, fail, fail. And now when you've grown enough, I start to think like, catastrophic failure doesn't just mean I fail. It means I have a team I can't provide for and put food on their table anymore. And there's more risks involved now. And so I've slowed down, or maybe you've had to speed up to then hit new levels of growth. And so it's just a different journey.
Yeah, you go through different seasons too, right? Like we talk about it a lot where, you kinda and I feel the same thing. I remember it was one of the more like profound things that I remember you telling me was, you kind of ride the coaster as it's going. Like if you feel like you're growing, you just keep riding it and then you'll hit a point where you feel like you need to take a step back
Yeah,
and you kind of
absolutely.
like maintain, right, for a little bit. And, we've been on a pretty like rapid trajectory as far as like I've had to just grow, grow, grow and figure it out along the way. And I wouldn't mind one of those maintenance phases like kind of
Yeah.
hidden at some point. So yeah, let's go back to when you opened, you said 2017. So you've had a gym for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was
Yeah.
that
When
8
we
years, six,
opened,
7 years?
yeah, so it was August 2017, and I mean, you personally know my backstory. I was working for Chad, Wesley Smith of Juggernaut. He had a location in South County, 20 minutes south of where I'm at, and he went full in on his online business and decided to close the gym. And I had 15 or so clients I was coaching. I was going to college as well at the time, splitting time there. And I decided to buy his equipment. He gave me a no interest payment plan. So super grateful for him to buy his stuff. And I found a spot that would sublease to me. I negotiated a revenue split, so I didn't have any fixed cost. I just said, I'll give you
Wow.
60% of my take home. Um,
Real quick, I
and
want
they
to stop
believed in
there
me.
because I didn't know that. I didn't know
Oh,
that.
really? Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
really cool because I think when people are trying to get into owning a gym, it's like there's this upfront cost, right? That they think
Yeah.
they're going to have, and most people do. I was lucky enough to, I mean, we talked about it when I did your podcast, but I saved up money from stimulus checks from during COVID, and unemployment from COVID, and just kind of stashed that away, to kind of fund the initial equipment purchase. I also took over a gym that was kind of closing down. And so I was able to get some secondhand equipment that way that was pretty cheap, along with the new stuff that we bought. And then also the lease payment. I remember, I mean, I don't have that anymore, but do you remember? I mean, it was very low, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
now you're in California, so you're going to think anything's low, but it was very low and it allowed me to start my business without a lot of stress. So my point is I think that if you're starting a gym, you probably could figure out a way, whether it's like a revenue share. I mean, that's a unique situation, to not have maybe the upfront cost and risk that you think.
I had $5,000 to my name. I had $5,000. I was 20 years old. Uh, and I was working 3 different jobs, and I had my members pay me 2 months up front for, like, gym membership dues, so I had that cash, which maybe was 2 grand or something. I got the no interest payment plan on equipment, and then I negotiated the revenue split, so again, it was all upside, no fixed operating cost, and they already had some equipment in that space. They were an existing weightlifting gym, so it worked out pretty well. And those deals, that's the thing is like those deals exist, that's the definition of bootstrap. Um, and it allowed me to have somewhat of I'll call it a trampoline to jump off of and grow. And you know what? Like a year later, I renegotiated the revenue share to a fixed lease because we were making money and it made more sense. Um,
Right.
but ultimately, that's the thing is it's getting creative from the go. I think a lot of people their fear of getting in is that they think the barrier to entry is too high, which it can be. But there's opportunities out there. You just have to go and create them and get creative and find them and pitch to people. And that's how it all began.
I think that's actually similar to like when we started. Yes, we had a fixed lease payment, but we were kind of in the end unit of another gym, right? Even our friend Max, I mean, his gym was in a within another gym,
A
right?
closet.
For the longest time. Yeah, I mean, it was crazy when I started working with Max remotely, and then I finally flew out there to train with him in person for a team camp. I was like, I walked into this gym and everybody, I had a suitcase because we were going to be there for like a week
Yeah.
and I like rolled my suitcase in, but I came in the end of the CrossFit gym and they're all like looking at me. I'm like, where's Max's gym? Oh, back there. And it's just like, oh,
Yep.
that's it. Like,
Yeah.
D Max Ada, like coaches out of this little spot. So you just would be surprised at like the opportunities out there to sublease, at least to get your foot in the door. I mean, before even I had the small unit, I started training people out of my parents' shop, like garage building.
Yeah.
Right. And so I don't know. I just think people maybe shut down opportunities too quickly because they think about this upfront cost where it's like you can really bootstrap at the beginning, get some cash flow going before you make the jump.
Absolutely. It's getting creative, it's planning, and ultimately and you can go in with if you have cash, you get a loan, like, those I've seen that those opportunities work well too, and you can grow faster. The way we might have went about it meant slower growth initially, but, ultimately, I wanted low risk, I didn't have access to capital. No one's gonna give a 20-year-old a big loan, like, it's not
I was
gonna work, and
25.
yeah,
So, yeah,
yeah,
you opened your
yeah.
gym earlier than me. I mean, 20 the fact that you have $5,000 at 20 is pretty good, man. Now you must have been a
Yeah.
little grinder.
Yeah, yeah, all I was spending money on was Xbox and, Madden points and stuff.
Yeah, there you go. So how did you get into, like, fitness, powerlifting? So you're obviously you kind of started with powerlifting, I'm assuming?
Yep, yep. So, I grew up overweight, so I was always, like, the fat kid, and it wasn't until I started playing football in high school, and it was the first time that I hit the weight room, and it was the first time that I was actually good at something. I remember actually so I was going back, I was held back in kindergarten. So,
Dang, bro.
just too rambunctious, I guess. And so I had friends I actually kept in touch with that were a year, above me. And so when I was in 8th grade, some of the friends I still was friends with, they were already doing freshman football. And so I remember my buddy Ethan, he had like a bench rack in his garage, like a power rack. And so they were all like bench pressing, all the freshman football guys. And then I was there too. And I outbenched all of them like as an 8th grader. And then they were in 9th grade. I forget what I hit. Maybe it was like 185 untrained, which is still pretty good.
Right.
Uh,
That's crazy.
yeah, and so I was like, "Whoa, like this is cool." And so then when I started lifting weights, yeah, when I eventually became a football player, I started lifting weights. I benched 300 pounds when I was 15. Um, like, and I was just strong. And so it was the first time where I got like rewarded for some sort of like sport, aptitude. And so, as humans, we gravitate towards things we're good at, right? Because we want that positive feedback. And so I just started living in the weight room, eventually lost 60 pounds, sophomore to junior year of high school. I wanted, to be in better shape, wanted girls to like me, all that stuff. And then I started competing in powerlifting as a junior in high school because I was like, I knew that I wasn't going to play college football and I wanted to be an athlete still. And so I started doing that. My first meet was actually at Metroflex in like Long Beach, where CT Fletcher
Wow.
used to train and stuff. I actually met him when I competed there, and went on to pull like 400 pounds, bench like 308 or something, because pause bench, whole different thing than touch and go and in sport and stuff.
No bouncing.
Exactly, hit butt on the bench, and I just fell in love with the sport from there. Just I got that positive feedback, I was good at it, and that's how the journey began.
Awesome. Yeah, I was curious if you had started out in like a sport, like football, because we train a lot of athletes at our gym, and at the end of the day, I think a lot of these athletes would benefit from obviously they think that they're going to our gym to get better at their sport, but what they don't realize is like that sport most likely is going to have an endpoint for them.
Yeah,
And fitness and lifting weights, resistance training is something that they can do the rest of their life. And I think a lot of them, my brother included, Reese. I mean, he was a very similar story to you, a little overweight, played football, good football player, but then he started, training basically when I started training hard. And his confidence, I don't know about you, but just kind of skyrocketed because being the
Yeah.
bigger kid, he was naturally stronger, right? You got to be kind of strong to carry around some extra weight. So I think that
Yeah.
helps initially, even if you lose the weight, right? Um, and again, his confidence started skyrocketing because that was the thing that he was better than everybody else at, right? And
Mhm.
so obviously he kept playing football through high school, but now I mean he competes in Olympic weightlifting and coaches at our gym, and it's just I think a lot of kids don't realize that if they start lifting now, that can be the thing that they maybe hold on to after school.
Yeah, and like that was the vehicle for me to getting into the industry. So what's crazy is, and this is where you look back and you think just fate and luck, just play this crazy role and everything. Um, my offensive line coach when I was a junior. So one of our alumni at Woodbridge High School in Irvine is Alex Parsons. He actually played on the championship teams at SC as a nose tackle. Um, take it back. I think he was nose tackle originally and then center after that, or guard. He then went on to play for the Raiders and broke his ankle, and he came back because he was rehabbing his injury, and he just decided to coach while he was rehabbing. He brought in this guy named Keith, who was one of Chad Wesley Smith's like original OG interns when Chad first started his gym. And so then I got to meet Chad through Alex, through Keith, and then Keith saw me training like just a dumbass,
Yep.
pardon my French, in the gym, and was just like, but saw like potential and like that I really cared about this stuff and took me under his wing. And I started working out with Alex Parsons, football, NFL football player, and Keith. And eventually I pitched Keith on hiring me for his like marketing and social media at 17 years old. And I started doing all of his social media stuff and then kind of became his like little assistant coach he built a kind of a kids football program within it all. So yeah, man. I mean, looking back, like that's how I met Chad. That's how that was my first step in the door with like all of this stuff. And it just was a couple things, a couple relationships I got to nurture, had the opportunity to nurture. Obviously, it was me that took the opportunity and like went for it. But just being around folks like that, man, so much luck and so much fate.
Yeah, I think that the people in the fitness industry, generally speaking, I mean, you're dealing with a lot of driven people, especially those that own a fitness business, because it's hard to balance both, and that's one thing that I definitely want to touch on later is like how you balance. That's something that I'm working on big time. But like balancing your life and balancing, you do jujitsu, right? Balancing your relationship with your fiance and owning a gym and being in the fitness business. So what would you say kind of has been something that I mean, I know for me, it's delegating tasks, right? Like getting
Mhm.
things started kind of off my plate and maybe onto somebody else's. But what are some other things that you've had to do?
In terms of balance.
Yeah, so like I guess for me, I struggle shutting off, right? Like at home, and I guess do you think it's important to, as a gym owner, to have hobbies outside, right? Like you are in Brazilian jiu-jitsu,
Yeah.
or as a Chad now plays golf all the time. So,
Yeah. Cause
you
he's too
know,
hurt for powerlifting and jujitsu now.
right.
Um, so I think that with now with the perspective I have, I think balance can be achieved. But I do think when you're starting up, I don't think balance exists. When I started the gym, I wasn't in a relationship. I was young. The gym was everything. I didn't take a vacation for more than 2 years. I was reflecting on that the other day. I was really scared to like go out of town for 2 days. I went on
Yeah.
a lake trip for the first time 2 years in, and that was huge. Um, and so I didn't have balance. I mean, I would always lift, like I always trained myself. I was still competing in powerlifting at the time. I was just coaching, training, going to bed, doing it again, rinse and repeat. That's not sustainable. Like, you can't do that for more than a couple of years or so. And unless you're like Alex Hormozy or something, I guess. But
Right.
ultimately, what I've been able to achieve is balance because I've been able to grow a great team, delegate, and learn more leadership skills for communicating vision and expectations, and then figuring out where I'm most needed in the business as well. My role has shifted. I haven't coached someone since 2019, which is interesting. That's almost now, I guess 6 years ago, or 2025 now. And so that in itself is its own problem. I mean, I haven't been in the sport in a long time, and so staying relevant has been difficult too. But I've leaned on my team, my staff to help guide that side of things, and they lean on me to help guide the business and making sure that our numbers pencil and that we're taking advantage of every opportunity we can to grow, and all of that stuff too. But I think ultimately when as we get older in life, it's important that the wheel of life rolls. And if you look at the life as like three main sections, we'll call that business, we'll call that personal, we'll call that family. All three segments need to be full for a wheel to roll if that was making up a wheel. And I think it's important, there's phases of life in which one might need to take more precedent than other. For example, I'm getting married in 3 months. This quarter is very family focused for me, and I've just accepted
Yep.
that if other things suffer, my training suffers, my personal and business maybe dwindles a little bit, that's okay. It's being okay with certain priorities taking priority in certain periods of life. But it's a work in progress. I'm a forever work in progress. I haven't mastered anything.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that though, because that's something that we talk to our athletes a lot about, and we've talked about on the podcast before. Is um, balance is not achievable in certain if you have certain goals at certain periods of time in life, right? And some of our athletes have really high goals, and it's okay that their sport and their goals kind of take precedence. I think that's they need to understand that, and I think everybody wants to say, "Hey, I'm going to be balanced." It's kind of funny. So the Bears just hired Ben Johnson, right? And
Yep.
in his opening press conference, he said, everybody preaches how you got to have a balance between the run and the pass in a
Hmm.
game, right? And he said, I don't believe it needs to be a balance of a run and pass in the game. And maybe over the course of a season, it needs to be. But
Hmm.
I might throw it 50 times in one game. I might run it 50 times in one game, right? And I think that kind of makes sense with business too. Is like maybe your life should be balanced over the course of it, but there's
Yes.
going to be periods of imbalance,
And
right?
depends on what the defense gives you. So what opportunities you're up
There you go.
against, and so ultimately, if you're going against your football terms, if you're going against a weak secondary, we're gonna throw the freaking ball, man. And if you're going against a weak, D line, whatever it is, linebackers, we're gonna run the ball. And same with business and life. It's if we're in a period of economic, let's just say economic prosperity, and it's flowing and people are signing up and we're moving forward, man, I'm not stopping. I'm gonna eke all the juice out of that period of life because I know that it's not guaranteed. I've seen it go the other direction. And so that's why you can touch on this a little bit. I'm a wave rider. I ride the wave. Whatever wave I'm on, I'll follow the momentum until it stops and I won't force change. I let the world tells me what I need to do. And I ride the next wave.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, it's definitely the truth. And I think more people need to realize that it's okay to kind of be singularly focused at a period of time. I think a lot of people tell people otherwise, right? Like they need to, you know, uh, my big thing is boundaries. Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody says, oh, you got to have boundaries. You can't, you got to, at this time of the day, you shut off your phone. You don't respond to emails. You don't do that. You know what? And maybe at some point in life, that's the truth. But if you want to grow a business, you want to, if you, or for example, um, let's say that your goal is fitness related and, oh, I need to be home by this time every night so that I can, see my wife or whatever, do this, do that. And at the end of the day, like when I was competing in weightlifting, like I was at the gym all day and it
Yeah.
just was what it was. Right. And that period of grinding on weightlifting led me into this new period of grinding in the gym business, right? Which will probably lead me into a new period of grinding on fatherhood, right?
Yes.
And family, right? And it's like, I don't know. I think there's got to be a grind somewhere.
Yeah. And my thing is like, I remember I started going to therapy when the gym was taken off. I was in school and I had to sort of decide if I was going to drop out and pursue the gym. I was failing in college, just studying kinesiology at Cal State Fullerton. It's a good school. And I had a breakdown, started going to therapy, and I remember sitting down and telling my therapist, and I still see him to this day, Dr. Espinoza, shout out. Uh, I
Awesome.
remember telling him that I want to be like the 1% of the 1%. I'm going to grind through my 20s. I want to be the next Elon Musk, all this all that stuff. And I look back
Right.
now and I'm like, what a silly thing. Like, I look back at, if you look at some of the one percenters, I look at people like Tom Brady, Elon, Jeff Bezos, these guys, guarantee you, you know, like Tom Brady to be the best quarterback of all time, he was probably a bad dad. Like he was probably not the best family man. We, had a very public divorce, all this stuff. You can't have other things when you're trying to pursue and be the top echelon in your, certain sector. And I've just accepted that I won't be the most successful business person because I want to pursue a more well-rounded life for myself. My definition for my own personal success is being able to be there for my family first and my friends, and then and using business and other opportunities to facilitate that in my life. So I don't want to be the 1%. Now, if someone wants to be, I look at guys like Alex Hormozy more on the come up and probably going to reach that pinnacle. All power to you. Who am I to say that my definition of success and well-roundedness is better than someone else's? It's mine. It's for me. And so feel free if you're an athlete listening to this and you want to be the next Tom Brady, freaking go for it, man. But commit, and understand that there's going to be sacrifices that you're going to have to make. And you may reflect, hopefully the goal is you reflect on that time period in your life where you did that thing and you're proud of it. And that's all that matters.
I want to real quick because I like to take. I don't think I'm an expert in business by any means at this point, but I do think I'm an expert in weightlifting and fitness. And so what I like to do is I like to kind of draw parallels because it helps me understand business better and kind of explain business better. And I draw parallels between fitness and business. And for me, in powerlifting and weightlifting and sports performance, strength conditioning, we utilize something usually called like block periodization, right? Or something. And so you have blocks of training where you essentially focus on one aspect, just one quality, right, of your fitness. And the idea is that the other aspects are kind of on maintenance during that time. And I think that's kind of like life, right? It's like block periodization, right? And once you really focus on something and you have that skill now, it doesn't just go away,
Yeah.
right? But I think a lot of people try to be too balanced in the short term,
Mhm.
right? Just like with their training and with their life, and it's like they never really achieve expertise in anything, right? And so, for example, I had a long block of life that was focused on Olympic weightlifting and fitness, right? And now that my life is not focused on that necessarily, I'm still pretty damn good at that thing, right?
Yeah.
Like if I picked up once my hips healed, if I pick up a barbell, I probably snatch 130 cold.
Yeah.
Like, and I'll always be able to do that, maybe until I get old, right? But
Yeah.
you see what I'm saying? Like I'm not going to just lose that. And so the
Mhm.
same thing with business is my goal is to, get the point to where I work really hard in this phase to where I maybe can take the foot off the gas and put it on something else, but I still will have this thing that I built. Right. And I think people need to do that with their training too. Is like, we talk about, I use the example of CrossFit, where the whole idea with CrossFit is that you're trying to be good at everything. Right.
Yeah.
But I think the best route for them would be, I always say, like, if I could have you snatch, let's say 12 times a year. I was like allotted 12 snatch sessions for you in the whole year. I would
Mhm.
actually have you do that probably over the course of like 1 to 2 months and
Mhm.
actually like learn to snatch, like get
Yeah.
pretty good at it, then go once a month. Because if you do it once a month, and that's the balanced approach, you're actually going to like every month that you go to do it, you're gonna like you forget what you did the
Forgot.
last time. You're not gonna get any better, right? So, anyways, I know we've kind of rambled on this for a bit, but I think
Yeah.
people need to understand that balance does not exist or does not need to exist in the short term if you want to reach certain goals.
Yeah. And I look at life, business, a lot of it is like 12-week sprints, with one thing in mind. And when you focus on one thing, like what you just said, like for example, if you want to learn a new language, it's probably better to sprint on that and learn the new language, and then you can stop studying and just practice once a month for the rest of your life, and you'll probably be able to speak that language. But if you're like, I'm going to learn a new language and practice once a month forever, you're probably never going to be fluent in the language. And so that I think that applies to everything in life.
That's a great. I like where you because I think a lot more people can relate to the language thing. They can
Yeah.
understand like, hey, once you learn the language, you don't just forget the language,
Yeah.
right? But you got to learn it first. And if
Mhm.
you just try to learn it like very slowly over time, it's probably not going to work, right?
Exactly.
So, I want to touch on how your gym's changed over, over the years. I know you started out, it was Bartell Barbell. Am I right?
Well, no, my Instagram tag's always been BartellBarbell. I started actually it's really always been SoCal powerlifting.
Oh, okay.
I had 2 partners originally that I bought out really early on. It was named something else. I signed an NDA. I can't, disclose, but yeah, it
Mhm.
was named something else. I renamed it SoCal Powerlifting after 6 months of doing it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That's what I thought I remembered, like, I'm pretty sure, man, when you were on Chad's podcast, like, years before I met you, like, on Jug Life, it was, like, Zach
Yeah.
Bartell of Bartell Barbell, but
They
that
well,
maybe
they
they're
used to
current
call me,
yeah.
Chad used to call me Bartell, he used to call my clients and me, like, Bartell's Barbarians.
Oh,
'Cause
nice.
we'd just be out there
Nice.
grinding, doing 8 sets of 8 on squats and stuff, but, yeah, no, I did when I actually started my brand, I started a brand in high school called Bartell Barbell. I had, like, this Superman looking
Okay.
logo with, like, a B squared. So that was my idea, but I realized early on, I don't want a gym that's named after me. I want it to stand on its own 2 feet.
I was actually talking to somebody about that this morning, and we were talking about how you're going to be on the podcast and how we're still Richmond Elite Performance, and uh, I don't love it, but we go by rep more,
Yeah,
right? And the acronym's just too cool for me to let go of. So,
reps
it's like
great.
one of those. Yeah, I think it's one of those things where like I'll bet a lot of the brands that you. I'm trying to think of an example. I know there's a lot out there, but they're like known for their acronym. But if you like actually pieced it down, it is like somebody's name.
Yes,
Um, you
absolutely.
know what I'm saying? But they kinda shift into the acronym. So,
Yeah.
yeah, anyways, we when we first started talking or working together, that was one thing. It's like at the end of the day, you know, it's gonna be hard for you to ever get out of your business and go on a vacation and do these things and grow your business if you are the reason like, if you are like, when everybody comes and they're like, "Oh, this business is Jared," right?
Yes.
You want the business to
Where'd
thrive
you go?
without you, and
Can I work with
that's been a
Jared?
big thing.
Yeah.
Exactly, right, and now, I wanted to touch on how you said you haven't coached since 2019. I
Yeah.
still coach a little bit, I coach way less, mostly just Olympic weightlifting at this point, at the gym, and we have other, great coaches that take on our sports performance clients and our group fitness clients, but I think a lot of people maybe if you're listening to this and you're, like, bummed out that maybe you're not working with me, it's at the end of the day, like, if you want the gym to thrive the way that it needs to thrive, and it is right now, and to have these awesome coaches, I have to take on more of a CEO role for the gym.
Well, and he also kind of going on, like, when I stopped coaching, I was a little bit of a victim of circumstance. I had to pretty much get my left knee reconstructed from a ton of, my left knee was arthritic from a ton of patellar dislocations I experienced through high school. In my junior year of football, I dislocated my patella 8 times. Um, and so my joint was extremely arthritic. I couldn't squat anymore without 8 like, 5 Advils, 2 knee like, a knee wrap with a knee sleeve. It was bad, icy hot, like, it was just pretty bad. So I stopped competing after the surgery. I tried to get back into squatting. It started causing other issues because I was just so much hip shift and, things like that I really couldn't overcome. And what happened was it killed my love for learning more about coaching and my own education and growth. And what I realized was with my coaching, at my peak, I was coaching 68 clients, some in person, some online. And I realized the product I was delivering was subpar. And that was hard. It hit me when I had a client that I really enjoyed working with leave and just kind of tell me straight up what he thought. And it was true. And so at that moment in time, what I realized was if I'm not furthering my education and sharpening my blade as a coach, my clients deserve to work with someone who is, and that's another coach in my building. And that's the thing that you just alluded to is like if you coached every client, the product that you would deliver would be subpar, and that's not fair to your customers and your clients and your athletes. And so by them working with a coach who's just a coach, who's specifically that is their profession, that is their their blade they're sharpening, they're going to get a much better experience getting coached by someone else. And that's what I realized in my gym. And so that's what happened back in 2019.
I think a lot of my clients, if I have some listening to this, they could definitely probably see or kind of look back and find that moment in time where I was doing way too much for a couple years. Which again, we talked about balance, and like there wasn't any balance at that point, right? And it probably needed to be that way for about a year. But yeah, like I remember I had clients. I had a guy one time. He would just always be like, "You okay? Like, are you in a bad mood today?" Basically, and I'm like, "I'm fine," but it's like it didn't look like it, and I didn't
Mhm.
realize that like I was putting off certain energy because again I'm handling every aspect of the business, right, and then coaching. I think I was doing 50 to 60 hours a week of PT, like in person PT, doing remote coaching. Obviously trying to run KPIs and like numbers and stuff and grow the business and do all the marketing. And yeah, like I said, people would always be like, "Hey, they bring me monsters." Like that's when you know it's bad because it's like, "Hey, you're
Yeah.
pretty tired today." So,
Yeah.
anyways, that was a big
Yep.
thing, and I think our product is way better because of it. So, I wanted to talk a little bit more now about like the business side of things and kind of like how is your gym maybe changed over the years? Um, and and then after that, maybe talk about like the mistakes that you were kind of made along the way and things you would do
How much time do
differently.
you have to discuss mistakes?
Wow.
Um, no, this is a joke. But, yeah, so, I mean, the gym has changed a ton. Ultimately, we grew fast. I grew, if we go like I'll use members as the KPI. So like I went from 15 members to 500 members in 4 years. Um, Crazy. And so dealing with like growth brings its own problems. Growth is the best teacher because you make mistakes. And so, ultimately, I guess like one of the big things I'll speak on the coach side, like the staff side, because the product is the same. When I started coaching, the model has stayed the same. I created the model we currently when someone works with us, let's use in-person coaching as the example. They get 24/7 gym access, they get customized programming via True Coach, and then they get one or two one-on-one sessions with their coach a month. And so the True Coach allows the coach to give them feedback, every day on their training, watch the videos and stuff. That stayed the same, and I created that because I realized I'd burn out if I was on the floor coaching all day, which I was doing at Juggernaut. Now, what's really changed is the building the team aspect. We I've created powerlifting coaching, and you could say the same for probably weightlifting coaching. It's not it hasn't been a career. It's always something kind of you did part time. Like I know with you, you were a CrossFit coach and did some weightlifting coaching. And you kind of dabbled in a couple things. You pieced income together to make it work and follow your
Yep.
dreams. And now, if you my gym now, my coaches have health insurance, they have 401, they have benefits, they have all I've it's a job, it's real. They get 401k matching, all this stuff. And so what I've done with them is I used to want to have coaches be Swiss Army knives where they would sell, they would retain, they would coach, they would do all these other tasks, market. And now I've built in a way where coaches coach, marketers market, salespeople sell, and I've segmented it out like it's a business rather than having them kind of be their own little entrepreneur within the business. I don't think that's fair. So that's been the biggest, I'd say, shift that we've made where I have a leadership team and there's delegation and people have tasks and whatnot. Outside of that, it's as you grow, as we've gotten bigger, it's been harder to grow more. There's kind of a saturation point that you reach, and we've talked about this. There's potentially maybe a little ceiling of opportunity if you're in like one location. And, what I realized was like, you can't build your business on the 1%. Everyone wants to coach the best lifters, the competitors, the people going to nationals and worlds and everything like that. And the fact of the matter is there's more people that are just learning how to lift weights than there are at the pinnacle of sport. That's just any sport. And
Yep.
so we've really honed in and focused on teaching people how to lift weights properly, getting people in the door who maybe they've been fumbling around following an online program at some 24-hour fitness or something, and they want to take it more seriously. And really, we take lifters from A to Z, whereas a lot of like top tier coaches, what I see is they take lifters from like, X to Z. It's like someone who's already good and they just get them a little bit stronger and then they slap their name on them and said, I did that. When no, like,
Percent.
did you teach that person how to squat? We teach the people how to squat, and then 3 years later, we load the bar for their attempts at nationals, and we're really proud of that.
Yeah, I think that's I can relate to that a lot because most of the of the Olympic weightlifters that we have specifically, like I taught them what a snatch was or a
Yeah.
clean was, right? And then they're competing at nationals, a couple years later, and they're probably not winning nationals, right? But I think a lot of people that are looking from the outside, they're like, oh, Iowa Elite is our weightlifting club. They might not have guys winning nationals, but we have a handful of people that are qualifying for nationals, and most of which, like I said, started weightlifting when they started working with us.
Yeah.
And we just don't have, we don't get some of these guys that kind of switch teams every year, and then it's like the team just kind of slaps their name on it and says, "Hey, we coach that athlete," and it's like, I mean, if you want to call that coaching, right? I mean, you know
Yeah.
how that is, right?
Yep.
So I think that's a big part of it is that we want to be, like you said, a gym that takes athletes from A to Z, and it's just more fulfilling that way too.
Yeah. 100%. And I'd say the biggest change that we've experienced is my personal growth. Um, I think when you start a business, at least for me, it was a selfish endeavor. It was I wanted to create a life for myself, doing the things I wanted to do. I wanted to make enough money, doing what I love to do, but it was very selfish. I never expected this to get to the point where I have a full-time staff, full-time team. I just saw myself with as being the main guy, doing some seminars, around the world, coaching powerlifting, and I wanted to just be a me thing. And then you realize it grows into something bigger than you. And, what keeps me up at night isn't, will we get enough clients or, am I making enough money and this and that? It's, will I be able to give my team and my coaches opportunities to live their best lives? That sounds really cliche. Like I have that scripted and I'm just trying to be this good guy, but like literally, like these people have trusted me to be their employer. They've sort of put their eggs in this basket. And I really respect that trust, that respect, and that loyalty. And so my pursuit is at this point in life is really for them, and then by doing that, I will continue to improve the business, create a great product, try and increase revenue and profitability and all that stuff. But the side effect of that is I can provide more opportunities for people.
Yeah, and we've brought on a lot more team members here in the last year, and that's definitely been something that is new for me. But you quickly see, hiring people, um, you quickly start feeling obligated, or you start feeling responsible for their livelihood. And I hope I have a lot of the team members I have. I mean, one of them is my brother, right? And then our other two full time guys are good friends of mine, honestly. And we've talked about how the vision that we see, for them, and the growth potential that we see for them, and the roles that I can see them growing into as the business grows. And so I mean, that's one of the things that drives me the most is
Yeah.
being able to fulfill on that, not promise, but that the vision that we've talked about over the years. Right. So, I wanted to also ask you, um, what are, like, as obviously we've talked about this, but what's kind of the next for you in your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah.
Or, I mean, those specifically if you don't want to, but we can just say, like, do you want to just own a gym forever? Like, because we've talked about you're not necessarily just a uh, business coach for gym owners. It's like you're a business coach,
Yeah.
for an entrepreneur. So, like, do you think, do you want to, do other things?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I'm extremely ADHD. I love a dynamic lifestyle. That's why I do what I do. That's why I wanted to do fitness, because fitness kind of lets you be your own like boss. And then that's why I created this. Um, one of the things that I think about is I, it- the ceiling of opportunity when it comes to running a gym is a lower ceiling than if you were running a manufacturing company or food or something like that, right? And that's not a bad thing. Um, but for me, what I've tried to look at is I have long time horizons of my life. I look at things in like a decade, sense rather than next year, next month, and et cetera. Or at least I try my best to do so. Um, and so one of my things is I feel like the gym is my sandbox of entrepreneurship, preparing me for the next opportunity that I might not even know exists yet. It's my sandbox of upskilling my leadership, learning how to run a company, to grow a company. And then when the opportunity calls that I don't even know maybe exists quite yet, I'll be ready to crush it. Um, I see the gym as always playing a role in my life. One of the things that I'm really, at least recently, acutely aware of is like I reflect sometimes and I'm like, am I the leader that takes this from being a $1 million company to a $3 million company? I don't know, because I'm not training powerlifting. I'm not in it as much, and I don't want that to be our bottleneck. Like I don't want myself to be the bottleneck. And so I think about some of my team members, and I'm like, maybe that's them. And that's those are discussions I have with my leaders. I they know that I feel that way. And so I maybe one of the things I potentially one day it's like having them take over one day. I love coaching business. Because I love the dynamic side of solving problems. And I love coaching business in different sectors. It's just so fun, and every call is different. And like the conversations I have help me grow too. I feel like it's selfish in a way. I learned there's been calls we've had, things you've done where I write a note down, I'm like, I'm going to do that shit too. And so, yeah, I think, my goal in life is to probably be the best father I can be. I don't have any kids yet, but I really want to be a dad one day. We've talked about this. And so I want to be the dad, who coaches all the sports teams. Maybe I'm an offensive coordinator. I don't know. Uh,
There you
and so for me, it's creating whatever opportunity calls to me. I'll be ready for it and I'll prepare. And I'm doing my work now and studying for the tests that I don't know exists, and that's okay. And then ultimately, making sure that my life is as well rounded as it can be, so that I can be the best father, be the best husband, all these other things, be the best son that I can be, and utilize business and growth and all that stuff to allow me to achieve my personal definition of success, which is pretty family oriented.
Why not a defensive coordinator? You're an
Dude,
offensive guy?
dude, I was top like 1% on Madden for a couple of years back in the day. Believe it or not. So yeah, I mean I can run a mean defense. My defense is probably too complicated for high school. Uh
There you
so
go.
offense, I've been playing college football. Like that's my hobby. Like I just play a couple games of college football probably every other day. And I run this like I play as Alabama, which is totally cheating. And
Yeah,
I
what the
run
heck?
like this crazy like jet sweep. So I audible every single play. I go no huddle. Like I just have this like fast paced offense that could totally be a high school offense. So like that's my that's my thought process.
Well, you could probably be the Bears offensive coordinator because that's about what they look like they're doing. Just clicking ask Madden. Ask Madden.
Yeah,
That's what we're doing,
yeah.
right?
Well, at least you have Ben Johnson, who's a
Yeah,
offensive mastermind.
Ben's the
Yeah,
savior. He's the
yeah.
savior.
That's what you think
Yeah,
every
no,
time, though. So,
yeah, hey, I'm gonna stay really positive on this one, so don't bring me down.
mhm,
The reason I ask about your future stuff is because you had kind of brought up how when you first started, your gym, you just thought, hey, just own this gym, kind of allows you to work out when you want to, have it's like a lifestyle business, right? I guess, right?
yep,
And just kind of,
yeah,
and then and I was the same way, right? That was
yeah,
kind of where I was at probably when we first started working together. And then you move the goalpost, right? And that's kind
yes,
of what you do, and that just means like you now have what you wanted, but you're not satisfied with it, right?
never,
And then you move the goalpost, and again you achieve the new thing. You kick the field goal, but now
yeah.
that's still not good enough, right? And you keep doing that. And I've done that a lot. But I kind of think that's, at one point in time, like I said, I mean, dude, in college, so I did graduate college.
Mhm,
And anyways, when I was in college, I wrote a lot of business plans for our um that was just part of the class, and all of them were gyms. And that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to own a gym. I wanted to train all the time. I wanted to coach people. And then it's like, wait a second, right? You realize that that's not all there is to life. And you kind of move the goalpost, and you realize that, like, I don't want to be defined as just a gym owner. And so I talked to a few people about that kind of stuff, but um, I obviously talked to you a lot about it. And I just think it's cool to get it out there. They're like, hey, I want to be more than a gym owner someday.
I think that Goalposts are important. I think where people fail is celebrating the victories, kind of stopping and smelling the roses. I think if you're, I think if you're a person in life who that wants to achieve a lot of things and has a lot of goals, it's just oftentimes by the time we reach a goal, we're already thinking about the next one, which I think is inherently probably a positive thing. If you look at like I dumb things down to like evolutionary standpoints, so I'm always thinking like
Yeah.
evolutionarily, like how did this biologic thing that we have serve us in times where we needed to hunt and we had tribes. And so like you think about goals, it's like, yeah, if a tribe, if I'm a warrior in a tribe and my goal is to kill a buffalo to feed my family, by the time I kill the buffalo, I'm already probably thinking about how am I going to get the next one, because we're going to run out of this meat one day. And so if you think
Yep.
from a biologic evolutionary, evolutionary standpoint, there's a reason for that. There's a reason we always are more prone to looking at the next thing without celebrating the current thing. Now, the difference is we live in an ecosystem now where we have our basic needs are probably met. We have food on our table. Hopefully we have shelter, but the problem is we still have this way of thinking of like, I need to get to the next thing or else I'll die or I won't survive. And that's not true
Right.
for most people. Right. And so ultimately I think that the key here is, and I haven't mastered this whatsoever. But the key from what I'm trying to work on at least is hit the goal, celebrate the win. But also, I've had a this last year for us was our first down year in business, in 7 years. And so that was hard. And so a lot of that, reflection wise is like, you think about, is this a personal failure? But what I've realized is that's when you learn the lessons to then become the person you need to be to then achieve the next thing. When you're winning, you're not learning. It's when you're
No.
losing is when you learn. It's win or learn.
100%.
It's not win or lose. And if you look at like I saw one time someone talked about, whether you believe in God or whatever, just whatever it is, it's like if you went to the creator and you said, "Make me patient." What is that gonna what life events are you gonna have? You're gonna have events that take a long time to reach some sort of win or gold or reward to then build your patience, or make me strong-willed. Man, you're gonna get tossed some hard stuff to then become the version of the person that you want to be. And so, unfortunately, the only way is through. The obstacle is the way. Shout out, Ryan
Mhm.
Holiday. And that's the only way you can truly learn and become the person that you probably need to be able to even reach the next facet of success, the next tranche. And that's a hard thing, and that's what I've been personally reflecting on a lot is like, "Man, look, give me the hard things. I can bear the burden, and I will rise to the occasion and become the person I need to be to achieve the next thing that I want to achieve." And understanding that it's just part of the process. If you want to reach a certain level of achievement in sport, in life, in family, whatever it is, if you want to be like the village elder one day is kind of what I see myself as. I'm gonna have to go through some tough shit, and I'm gonna have to respond to it and become better. And that's my mantra now.
I think I actually heard this from Alex Hermosi, but he basically said, like, when you're going through a hard time, you should be, like, basically being thankful for the hard time and
Yeah.
saying, like, "Hey, all these other people that aren't going through this right now," instead of saying, like, "Why me? Why me? Why me?"
Yes.
You should be like, "Poor them," or "Poor me." You say, "Poor them." Like,
Yeah.
they're not to experience this, therefore, they're not going to get the growth that I'm gonna get from it, right? And it's really hard when you're going through the moment, but I think nobody looks like most people don't look back on hard times years later and say that they didn't grow in some way, from that hard
And if
time.
you and if you didn't grow, you wasted it. And that's the worst thing you can do.
Right. And I think people that are driven like us and like I think a lot of people that are listening to this are probably ones that will grow from those hard times. So, and that's think about it. What do we do in the gym? We purposefully give ourselves a hard time. That is literally
Yes.
like
You're
you're
breaking
giving
down to
yourself
build.
right? And that's what like training. It's like we always explain. It's not meant to be comfortable. Ben Johnson, again, to go back to his opening press conference, he said, "Players, you better uh, get comfortable being uncomfortable,
Yes.
right? And it's like the
Yeah.
whole point is the discomfort is what is making you better.
Yes.
And I wanted to touch base on what you had said prior about the evolutionary kind of side of moving the goalpost.
Yeah.
And I think there's another like we both have that moving the goalpost thing, but there's also, I think as an entrepreneur, you're kind of looking at the things that could go wrong in every
Yeah.
situation, right? Um, and you're basically trying to see the future. And I cannot remember what I heard this on, if it was a podcast or a book I was reading, but basically they said it's because you're trying to anticipate the future, and
Yeah.
anticipation is like a hedge against bad things. And I kind of, the way I look back is like when I would hear the word anticipation more, it was from my dad when we were talking about basketball. So I played point guard, and he would always say, you have to anticipate the next move, right? Like, so
Mhm.
as a point guard, you're kind of a step ahead of everybody. You're like, okay, I think this defender is going to go this way. And then I think the offensive player is going to do this, or, somebody else puts a shot up and you anticipate where that miss is going to go, right? Like you're like, I think based on the trajectory, it's going to go this way. So I'm going to head this way. Right. And so it's just a
Yep.
game of anticipation. That's what sports are, really, if you think
Yeah.
about it. Um, and I think so growing up as an athlete, I do the same thing in business where I'm constantly trying to anticipate what somebody might say, or what and here's the thing. When you aren't very knowledgeable, and this is what I think that you did, the biggest thing you did for me was you broke down these limiting beliefs, and that I was trying to anticipate things, but you were like, what you're anticipating, what you think is going to happen is probably not going to happen. Right.
Mhm.
So I didn't know that what I thought was wrong. And I think that's probably the biggest thing in life, is that holds people back, is they have limiting beliefs. They have beliefs that are patently false, that they believe to be, absolutely true, and they're basing their decisions off of these beliefs, right? Even going back to fitness, we have, people that think, if you squat more than once a week, you're overtraining your legs, right?
Yeah.
That's your knees are going to explode, or if your knees go past your toes, right? That you're going to get injured, right? Those are limiting beliefs. And again, I think the biggest thing I always tell people is when I was competing in weightlifting, I was squatting like 5, 6 times a week, right? Like
Yeah.
it's like what you think is true is just not true. And
Yeah.
until you change that, nothing in your life is going to change.
Yeah. Yeah. And ultimately those I going back to like the anticipation thing is like, so I got the opportunity to go to a Tony Robbins event and see Tony Robbins speak. And one of the big takeaways I had was there was like three things, but I only remember the two. And one was anticipating trends. And so as a business owner, it's like, and same with sport, it's like, can you anticipate the next move? And you may be right and you may be wrong, but if you can get good at being right, like that's a good thing in sport. 100%. If you anticipate, if you know what the offense is going to do when you're on defense, man, you can make the play. And you just have to study film and put in the work to know to do that. And
Right.
then the next thing is creating trends. So if you think in business, like you get to the point in business potentially where you're so big that you are the one where everyone's following you. Let's say your marketing is really good and other gyms are looking at what you're doing and then copying it. I know for us in here in Orange County at SoCal Powerlifting, there's been like 4 gyms to pop up that like have copied our model, and that's okay. Flattered. Imitation is the best form of flattery. I'm flattered. We're creating the trends. We're creating the, and that is the highest level I think in anything, is to be the one that's creating the trends. And like leading from the front and being so creative and then and staying ahead of it too. I think people can, you get to a point where you think you're, infallible, where it's like, I'm just the best. I'm always going to be the best. And I think that also has its own issues where it's easy for someone else to catch up. Um, respecting your opponents, I think is important, and your competitors. But yeah, ultimately it's continuing to push through, creating the trends, and then having that full sense of belief and having goals even that like scare you. When you write down goals, they should be so big that like you're like nervous and like scared. Those are real goals. Goals where you write down that you're comfortable hitting aren't goals.
All right, man. Well, that's
Yeah.
awesome. I mean, this has been awesome. I want to finish off the episode This is like a new, so we switched the name of the podcast from the Richmond Elite podcast to the Unfair Advantage podcast. And the idea with
Like
this
that.
unfair advantage thing is that it's an ironic kind of term where it's like, in sports, like life isn't fair, right? Sports aren't fair, but like if you're a basketball player and you're short, sorry, not fair, right?
Yeah.
Like it isn't fair. So it's kind of ironic that nothing is, in necessarily an unfair advantage because life isn't fair. But I feel like everybody has something that they can kind of lean on and say that is their unfair advantage, right? And we say like come into rep can be your unfair advantage, right?
I
Training
like
with
that.
us, that can be the thing that separates you. So, anyways, if you had to think of something in your life that maybe is your unfair advantage, that's kind of helped get you to where you're at, what would that be?
My unwavering belief in myself. Um, I think that I know that like no matter what, success, failure, I will always be able to make things work. I believe I have the secret sauce. I can talk my way in and out of anything. And I know that no matter how many risks I take, even if I hit, some sort of rock bottom, I know I'll be able to rise because I control my own destiny. I have a high locus of control, and um, I will never be a product of my environment or a victim of circumstance. I will I I will always make it happen as long as I have the head on my shoulders and belief in myself.
Where do you think you got that from? Parents or
No,
just circumstances?
I think proving it over and over again. Um, like Alex Mosey talks about that undeniable stack of proof. I think like
Mhm.
losing weight, like committing to something like lose 60 pounds, like in high school, and um, becoming like captain of my football team from being like a kid that never played football in his life and like was sucked at sport to like captain of football team. Um, like achieving, opening a business when I was 20 and it working. I just like have this like stack of proof where I've like every time I've committed to something, I've made it happen. And not to say there hasn't been failures as well, or even like jujitsu. Like started training jujitsu in 2019. I have medaled at worlds like 4 times.
That's
I'm
awesome.
losing to
And you've
guys in
dealt with a lot of
Brazil who are
injuries.
what, and I've all what? What'd you say?
You've dealt with a lot of injuries,
And I've
right?
dealt
Like
with
you've overcome a
mul
lot.
2 knee surgery, 2 patella tendon tears, and I've come back each freaking time. So I think it's just that undeniable stack of proof. I keep proving it over and over again. Like if I set on something, I'm going to do it. Um, and so and I did grow up in an environment where I felt like my parents were pretty supportive, but honestly, when I opened my business, my parents were extremely skeptical and sort of
Mm.
pushed me down a little bit, and I said no, I didn't care, and I moved forward. So, yeah, I think it was just actions I've always taken, um, and I've reached goals through those actions that I've looked back and like I did that shit, and I'm going to continue to do it, even if I'm stubborn about it.
Well, if you think about it, how does a client become confident in you? You give them proof that what you are providing works,
Yeah,
right? Like, you've now trained X amount of powerlifters to this level, and that's your undeniable proof to your clients that hey, um, this you should have confidence in us because we've done this over and over and over again. Here's the proof. So if you want confidence in yourself, I think a lot of youth athletes, young athletes especially, lack confidence. And it's, hey, how do I get that confidence? Well, you got to prove to yourself that you can do these things, and that might come through really hard work. So I love that.
yeah, yeah, man. Yeah, well, hey, I appreciate you having me on. This has been awesome, man. Again, I appreciate our relationship so much. It's been so fun to watch you grow, and you've helped me grow in ways that you probably, can't even imagine or fathom. So, just stoked to be here, man. And let's keep crushing it.
Awesome, dude. We'll talk to you in a few weeks, and I'll let you know when this comes out.
Sounds good, brother. I'll catch you later.
All right, see you, dude.